Good afternoon, and welcome to IMA's Inside Talk webinar series. The title of today's presentation is Improving Back Office Productivity, sponsored by Oracle NetSuite. I'm Adam Larson, and I'll be your host for today's Inside Talk webinar. It's a pleasure to have Steve Shannon as part of our program, and he'll be serving as moderator for today's event. Steve is responsible for identifying, establishing, and growing business and strategic partnerships that are beneficial to the IMA organization and its membership. He also manages the existing partner group, which includes Oracle NetSuite, Insperity, Blackline, IBM, Thomson Reuters, Ecova, SAP, Flowcast, Certify, Avalara, Profix, MinnowTree, and others who provide valuable business information and professional services to IMA and its members. Hi, Steve. Welcome to our program.
Hi, Adam. I'm very pleased to be part of the IMA webinar series, and on behalf of all of us here at IMA, I want to welcome you all to today's session. At this time, I would like to introduce our presenters for today's program. With us today, we have Junaid Samnani. Junaid has over 14 years of experience in guiding public and private companies through finance and operational transformations in order to drive efficiencies. One of his focus areas has been around back office optimization through use of technology in order to improve working capital, reduce cost, and enhance the strategic partnership with other functional groups. Junaid has experience across a variety of industries, including retail, energy, healthcare, software, manufacturing, and professional services. Junaid holds a bachelor degree in finance and accounting from DePaul University. Please join me in welcoming Junaid Samnani.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everyone. Looking forward to the discussion this afternoon.
Thanks, Junaid. I'd like to also introduce our second presenter, Joel France. As a managing director, Joel is responsible for client service. He provides insight on business advisory strategy, specializing in finance and technology enablement offerings, and guiding partnership strategy on finance governance tools. Joel has over 25 years of experience in finance process optimization, finance transformation, and supply chain and logistics. His clients include leading entities in the consumer and industrial products, retail, healthcare, energy, aerospace and defense electronics, and hospitality industries. Joel earned his Bachelor's of Science in Finance at the University of Texas at Dallas. Prior to Riveron, he held a number of leadership positions with companies including Texas Instruments, Baxter Healthcare, Coca-Cola, and KPMG. Please join me in welcoming Joel France.
Thank you, Steve. I hope everybody enjoys our discussion today, and looking forward to speaking with you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joel. Next, I'd like to introduce our third presenter for today's program, Ian McCracken. Ian is a director in the Business Performance Improvement practice at Riveron. His 10-plus years of experience includes both industry and management consulting. While in industry, he served in senior IT, HR, and strategic finance roles. While in consulting, he has helped clients with acquisition integrations, process improvement, IT implementations, revenue enhancement, and cost recovery initiatives across a variety of industries. He holds a Bachelor of Business Administration from Baylor University. Please join me in welcoming Ian McCracken.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks to all of you for joining us.
Thanks, Ian. And finally, I'd like to introduce our fourth featured presenter for today's program, Tim Andre. Tim has over 10 years of experience in accounting and finance leadership roles focused on implementing and optimizing finance and accounting processes at various organizations. He has provided significant improvements related to ERP design and implementation, financial close consolidation, and enterprise performance management process transformation, back office finance integration, and shared services design and implementation. Tim has experience with both public and private companies across a variety of industries, including aerospace and defense, consumer products, healthcare, energy, and financial services. Tim holds an MBA and a Bachelor of Business Administration in Finance from the University of Texas. Please join me in welcoming Tim Andre.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having us, and we're looking forward to the discussion today.
Okay, great. Before turning the presentation over to our speakers, I'd like to go over the learning objectives for today's program. After participating in this webinar, you will be able to explain how to align and optimize people, processes, and systems to effectively achieve strategic growth goals. You will also recognize key considerations, how to start, and the potential benefits to be gained by automating and standardizing your accounting processes and decision-making. You will also be able to give examples of key challenges that can result from an underutilized finance function. And finally, you should be able to apply proven best practices and considerations as demonstrated through various case studies. It's really great to see over 1,000 of you joining us today to learn more about ways to improve back office productivity. And we're looking forward to an informative presentation. So at this time, I will turn it over to Junaid to begin. Junaid?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you again for the introductions, and again, thank you everyone for joining us on this webinar this afternoon. So we'll start off with everyone here at Riveron is very excited to get this opportunity, again, to share with you guys all the thought leadership on how we optimize an organization's back office. So as Steve kind of alluded to, the individuals on the call are a group of specialized people driving transformation through either tech enablement or process optimization with a focus on revenue enhancement, cost reduction, and working capital improvement. So at a high level, the two goals that we want to address as part of this webinar is one, to make sure we provide you with information to know whether your organization is in need of a transformation, and two is to make sure we equip you with the ability to develop a framework to diagnose, communicate, and drive improvement within your own organization. So displayed on the screen, you should be able to see here is the agenda for today's meeting. So we're going to start with a brief overview of Riveron, followed by defining what is a back office to make sure we all understand that, you know, what we're going to talk about in relation to the back office to ensure we're all on the same page. Followed by that, we'll have Tim walk us through common challenges that we see in a back office, along with the evolution of the back office and what are key considerations that you should all be aware of as your organization continues to grow. Followed by that, we'll have Joel walk us through a four-step transformation process, which typically starts with development of a business case and goes all the way through an execution state. And lastly, we'll have Ian discuss two Riveron case studies which detail the challenges, the approach that was brought, that we utilized, and the benefits that were achieved. Next slide. So Riveron at a glance. So Riveron is a business advisory consulting firm. We are equipped with over 290 consultants, both experienced consultants as well as finance executives. We primarily work with PE firms, public and private organizations at a point of change in their organization, a challenge, or an inflection point, such as an acquisition, or they're looking to go IPO, they're trying to go through an audit, etc. We work with our clients all the way from a diligence for a potential acquisition, all the way through a deal cycle to help them improve their operations and accelerate returns on an asset. This year, we are on pace to do approximately 800 projects across 8 of our markets. I see that we've just arrived at our first polling question, so I'm going to turn it over to Steve, the moderator.
Okay, thanks, Junaid. Attendees should now see the first polling question open on your screen, and I'd like to remind everyone that you can have about 30 seconds to respond to each of the polling questions today. And certainly you can begin responding to each question as soon as it appears on your screen. So our first polling question is, what functional group are you most closely aligned to? Choose from among accounts receivable, accounts payable, general accounting, controller or accounting leadership, FP&A, or some other particular area. And again, please note that after selecting an answer, you must click the Submit button, which is located on the right side of your screen so that we can record your answer. So now, Junaid, let's click on the slide and see how our audience breaks down in terms of areas of alignment.
Thank you. So based on the poll results, it's great to see that majority of you are definitely part of the functional groups that we will be discussing today. I do also see there's a lot of accounting leadership in attendance, which is great because that's exactly what we have our data kind of referenced to, or our slides referenced to. So let's start with defining the back office. This particular slide is an industry agnostic view into what we define as the back office. So within the back office, as you can see on the slide, we're going to focus in on AR, AP, payroll, general accounting, and fixed assets. These are all groups that support the business that are not client-facing. Also within these groups, they are processing very large amounts of data along with repeatable and foundational kind of processes within the organization. So as I said earlier, that these groups have repeatable processes, therefore they are recurring on a monthly basis. This calls for an opportunity to drive optimization and automation. So allowing the team members to focus on more analysis as opposed to data gathering activities, which is what we see common in organizations that have a flawed back office, is that the teams are operating on a lot of data gathering activities. So as you will see on this chart is that all other functional groups in an organization rely on the back office for information. So an effective back office will take care of all of its data and information, and they will offer executives and leaders across all of the other functional groups to not only track their performance, but also give them an opportunity to improve their business processes. So as a business owner, you get a rough idea of where your resources are spending their time and what is that opportunity to drive improvement. So from organizations that we work with, there's typically 4 types of company profiles that we usually see that are driving kind of improvement in the back office. The first one is there's just an increased level of competition in the market. So there is a stress from an executive perspective to drive reducing cost in the organization or in the back office. The second type of organization is there's large growth goals. Whether it be geographic or service line expansion, there needs to be built-in scalable processes to be able to grow the business without having to hire a massive amounts of staff. The third type of organization is a distress situation where the organization's having a difficult time closing their books, collecting cash, paying their vendors, etc., that are also looking to drive some of that transformation. And lastly would be an organization that has just acquired a number of companies over a certain time frame, and now they're looking to integrate those processes and improve a bunch of synergies and reduce a significant amount of cost within the organization. So now I'll turn it over to Tim to kind of walk us through some of the common challenges that we see in the back office. Tim?
Thanks, Junaid. So as Junaid mentioned in the agenda, I'll be covering the common themes in an underperforming back office, as well as discussing when a company should embark on their performance improvement journey. So as you can see in this slide, the 5 most common themes of an inefficiently operating back office are the following. First, inefficient cash management. Second, inaccurate and untimely financial and management reporting. Third, an underperforming workforce. 4, disparate and suboptimized technology investments. And 5, an overall lacking control environment. Now the indicators that you see on each slide, or on this slide, are mentioned will help inform the creation of the business case, which Joel will discuss later in the presentation. So let's jump into the themes. So the first theme, inefficient cash management processes. So here we're focused on AP, AR, and inventory, but as Junaid pointed out, only AP and AR are traditionally held within the back office, so we'll focus on those today. So these departments are largely overlooked as they're seen as very straightforward processes and transactional, which lends itself to be a great target to automate and improve the process. So how do you know if you have a cash management issue? So the first thing I'd recommend is to look at metrics namely days sales outstanding and days payable outstanding. And make sure you compare those to your industry. Not only is it important to capture this at a point in time, but it's probably more important to trend this out over multiple time periods to see if you have a growing ratio in either of these. Now, another way that you can see if you have a cash management issue is to look at your AP and AR departments and try to see, how many resources are tied to fighting fires. So by fighting fires on the AP side, I mean how many vendors are threatening credit holds because they haven't been paid, or how many resources in your department are focused on trying to collect late payments and manage write-offs from customers. So these challenges within cash management result in an increased cost of borrowing due to working capital being tied up. So the second theme that I'd like to discuss is inaccurate and untimely reporting. So an inability to produce meaningful reports on time is usually the result of upstream inefficiencies related to the close process and not necessarily always a true reporting issue. Some challenges to produce timely reports are driven by the following. So the first phase of a close is to get your financial results submitted by your operating units. So if those are already delayed, you've already started a little bit behind the curve. Secondly, an overall poorly coordinated close process can also be a challenge there. So what I'm talking about is manual journal entries where you could be leveraging your system more effectively and having those automatically created. Or maybe immaterial accruals or not leveraging estimates where possible to speed up the close. Now the third challenge is an over-reliance on Excel for consolidation and reporting. So this truly is an inefficiency within the reporting that can happen with inaccurate and untimely reporting. So challenges that result in this case is a state of constant close. So your accountants are constantly looking in the rearview mirror rather than having the time to look forward and provide forward-looking insights to the business. The third theme that I'd like to discuss is ineffective workforce performance. So this one is relatively straightforward. A company with struggling with workforce performance typically has a lack of clearly defined roles and responsibilities for their employees, which leads to working excessive hours, leading to low employee morale. Also, there's a lack of understanding of the impact of their specific job and how it fits into the bigger picture. So a company that's struggling with workforce performance will constantly be recruiting and training new employees due to high turnover, and will also have an increased back office expense as the employees aren't working as efficiently as possible. The fourth theme I'd like to discuss is disparate systems and unused technology. So companies with suboptimized technology will likely have a heavy investment in solutions and a largely disregard to the underlying processes, or maybe even limited functionality on how the investment in the technology solution was implemented. There's excessive time dedicated to exporting and importing data between systems, so they'll implement systems but not have the linkages built out, which can also lead to version control issues throughout the close cycle. So the impact related to this is excessive expense, which reduces your EBITDA, and also multiple sources of the truth, which can confuse and complicate the close cycle. The fifth and final theme that I'd like to discuss is a lack of controls. This challenge typically is a culmination of the preceding four that I've walked through. So a company with lacking control environment will experience an excessive duration related to completing audits, as well as a high number of material weaknesses, which leads to minimizing investor confidence and an environment for potential fraud. So with that, we've arrived at our second poll question, so I'm going to turn your attention back over to Steve.
Okay, thanks, Tim. As you know, you can begin responding to each of our poll questions immediately, and you'll have about 30 seconds to respond. So our second question today is, which theme or challenge mentioned impacts you the most? Is it A, inefficient cash management, or B, inaccurate and untimely reporting, C, ineffective workforce performance, D, disparate systems and unused technology? Is it E, lack of controls? Or F, more than one of the above? And again, after choosing your answer, please be sure to click the Submit button located below the response options so that we can record your answer. So, Tim, let's take a look at the results. This will be very interesting. This hasn't been a question that's been asked before, so.
Okay. Yeah, the results just came across. So it looks like we have disparate systems and unused technology is the number one there. But there's also a scattering across the others as well, which we were hoping to see because these were the 5 common themes that we come across most often. All righty. So let's shift gears. And what I want to do now is talk about back office productivity and discuss the appropriate time to focus your effort on back office improvement initiatives. So you might guess that the answer here is going to be, well, right now, and if you haven't started, you're behind the 8 ball, and that's not the case. So what we recommend is to take a strategic approach here and assess the life cycle stage of your business first, and that will help hone and focus your efforts accordingly. So what you're seeing on this slide is a comparison between 2 organizations, noted in red and blue, across the different stages of a company life cycle, from startup/small company to growth, to maturity, and finally through future growth. So I'm going to go into more detail into what a company should be focusing on from a back office optimization standpoint during each of these stages. So first, let's start off with a startup or a small company. So here, you need to be focusing on business viability and top-line growth. You don't have the option to be distracted and worry about how to optimize a back office when your focus really needs to be on making the business viable. So at this stage, it's perfectly acceptable to have a back office with manual processes. Here, your focus needs to be on the fundamentals. How are you paying your vendors, making sure you're paying them appropriately, and making sure that you're receiving the money that's owed to you from your customer base. So next, as we move to the right along the curve, we'll enter the growth and maturity phases. Now, as you can see by the graph, the green vertical bars show this is the time where you need to be working on instilling a continuous improvement culture in the back office. So here what you should be doing is reviewing and streamlining business critical back office processes and reports and aligning people around these optimized processes. Here you should also be making an investment to implement scalable technologies, namely an ERP system, maybe a corporate performance management system, looking at financial reporting and budgeting and forecasting to help your FP&A function. And as well as implementing these technologies, you should be looking on how you're going to link these systems together to make sure you're not constantly in this exporting and importing data from system to system. Also within the growth and maturity phase, you should be assessing your operating model, namely looking to see if it makes sense to consolidate the back office processes into one organization rather than having them embedded in the business operations. Here, this will allow you to really focus on your processes and streamline them under one roof and deliver those services out to your business operations. So finally, the last stage here is future growth, and this is where a business reinvests itself and will determine whether it continues or if it suffers decline. So because of that, this is seen as an inflection point where a company will be moving into new or maybe adjacent markets, expanding product or service offerings, or maybe even acquiring an existing firm and integrating them into their ongoing business. So here, the investments made in the growth and maturity stages to the back office will likely determine whether or not the new growth can be supported and scaled by the back office. If the company has been successful in the process transformation journey and investing early on the curve, the back office will be able to support the new growth and become a strategic partner with the business, which can unleash new business insights due to the data that the back office sits on top of. If not, it can be challenging, disruptive, and expensive, and could even result in failure. So with that, we've arrived at our third poll question, so I'm going to turn it back over to Steve.
Okay, thanks again. So our third poll question is now on your screen, and attendees can respond to this poll question immediately as I read through the question. So the third question for today is, what stage of the business life cycle is your company in? Choose from among A, startup, or growth, or maturity, or future growth. And again, after selecting your answer, please be sure to click the Submit button, which is located below the response options, to ensure that your response is recorded. So let's take a look at the results again, Tim, and see how our audience is segmented.
Okay, so it turns out the majority of the participants are in the growth and maturity phase, which again, I'm glad to hear that based on, during the presentation, it's really the growth and maturity phase is a sweet spot to start instilling that continuous improvement culture. So with that, I'm going to pass it along to Joel, who's going to talk through our 4-step process transformation methodology.
Thank you, Tim. I'm going to talk about the approach to transformation, and what we've done, we've broken these steps out into 4 phases. The first one being create a business case for change. Second, design the future. Prioritize the initiatives, and then develop and execute the plan. In the business case for change phase, this is where you're actually identifying the need for change. Note in this phase, a process doesn't have to be broken. It may just need to be improved upon. You're in a manual situation now and you're wanting to move it to more of an automated system or process. During the design stage, this is where you're focusing on really 3 areas that we've talked about: people, process, and technology. The third phase, prioritize the initiatives. So if you've come up with a number of different projects or issues that you're wanting to resolve, this is where you're deciding which projects or which phase go in what sequence. This includes the timing of things and when they happen. And then the last phase is actually developing and execute the plan. You're going to create a detailed project plan and communicate that plan to all the members of the project and the stakeholders. And at the bottom there, you see the red line going across the page. That is for the project and change management activities. This is in place throughout all the phases of the transformation. And actually, change management will extend beyond the go-live to ensure all the transformation stays in place. Now I'm going to walk you through each of these steps in a little more detail. So the first phase is business case development. What are some of the reasons for change? As Tim talked about earlier when he was discussing the common challenges found in the back office, this is where some of these areas will come out. So the first one being an inefficient cash management process. Again, your days sales and days payable are out of line with your industry group. Inaccurate or untimely reporting. This is where it's hard for you to close the books. You may be making numerous manual journal entries, just reclass or correct entries. And next would be ineffective workforce performance. Some of the challenges you see here are resolving problems with more people. This is where you're having more people than necessary in your back office because some of your systems or processes are just not working well. You also see your workforce working long hours. And sometimes you'll see that the team that you have working has not been adequately trained to perform the task or use the technology they're using. Next, disparate systems and unused technology. Maybe you have multiple systems out there. I think this is one of the polling questions that indicated that this is an issue for a lot of you. You may have multiple sources of truth. You may see your back office using excessive use of Excel. Sometimes you'll see that the technology is not adequately or fully implemented. It's lack of automation. And sometimes you see that you just have old technology. I had a client pass that the version of ERP system they were on hadn't been upgraded since the mid-'80s. And so they're not getting all the current automation opportunities that a lot of other companies are. And then lastly, the lack of controls. are you having a hard time with your audit? Is there a lot of scrutiny? Or is it difficult just completing an audit? We had a client not long ago that went way into the 9th month of the year before they finished it up. And it's all due to some of their systems and processes. So the first thing I want to talk about is assessing the current state by documenting the task and steps associated with the people, process, and technology. Next, you're going to analyze that data and identify any KPIs that are in place that you need to keep track of. The next step you're going to follow through is going to create a flow chart. You're wanting to flow chart the process so you can identify pain points. Are the processes very manual or not well defined? As Tim was pointing out earlier, people don't know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Is the technology helpful or is it a hindrance? Does it actually cause more problems than it solves? Do you have the right systems in place? Are they correctly configured to get the highest benefits for your organization? Again, are you employing more people than you need to just because your systems aren't able to keep up with the information required by the company? Have you actually set up the automatic accounting instructions? AAI is how we usually refer to this. Most of your current ERP systems today have AAIs where you can actually create allocations automatically, create journal entries based on information that's held in the system, so you don't have to have somebody working in Excel. Once you get to this point, you really are able to identify those improvement opportunities. And once you've identified those opportunities, this is where you start creating a business case for change. What are you wanting to do? What are you wanting to achieve? What are you going to get out of it? How is it going to benefit the company? So the next step in this is designing the future. So once you've built the business case for change, you will now design a new process incorporating all the improvements identified in the business case. Identify how the process changed and how will this new process be better and more efficient. Will you need to retrain your people? This is where getting people to enter all the information into the system that should be there. A lot of times we find that out of the back office in the operational side, people just aren't including all the information that the back office is actually having to, at the end of the month, enter that data in or get it there so they can close the books. Do you have the right people in place, or will you need additional people? This is something else that comes out during this design stage. Identify where the technology changes are being applied to fully utilize the system. What do you need to get out of your system? How are you getting the data into the system? Again, configuring the AAIs in the system so it's actually doing all the heavy lifting and work for you. So at the end of the month, the data is just coming out and there's not a whole bunch of manual activities going on just to get the systems correct. This could also include installing new technology or getting the technology to automatically talk to other systems. Do you have third-party systems that need to be connected via APIs into your ERP system? That way, you're reducing the number of journal entries out there. You want the systems talking to each other. You want them to make system entries, not manual journal entries. Third step is to look at all the reporting requirements. Make sure all current reporting is captured and can be reproduced with the changes that you've just designed. You'll also want to identify additional reporting enhancements that could help grow the business. Once you're not spending all your time in the back office just getting the numbers into it, but now your back office can actually become more analytic and helping the business grow, identifying trends. And then the third thing you want to do on the reporting is to think about the future. You're not wanting to build a new system just to accomplish what you need today. This is where you're thinking 3 and 5 years out. How can what you're building expand as the business expands so you can generate new reports as needed that will help the business grow? And the fourth step on the design is to look at the changes you're putting in place, and how are these changes affecting others? Will your project affect another person or another organization? Will it also affect other projects that may be going on? So this is where you're wanting to now look outside of just the back office and make sure that your project is going to marry up with other projects. The third phase or third step is to prioritize those initiatives. So now you've built the business case and you've designed the future state process, it's time to decide which projects that you've identified or what issues you're trying to accomplish, in what order do you want to actually implement these. So the first thing you're going to do is create a roadmap with all the initiatives. You will need to identify if this is a short-term project or a long-term project. Is the project a big effort or an easy project, i.e., as we use, low-hanging fruit? Is it a low-cost, low-effort, quick-win project that you can get accomplished quickly, or is this a long-term project that's going to go on for months or maybe even years? If it's a big project, will you need to stagger the phases to account for business needs? An example of that would be, is this going to cross over the year end, so it's going to come in conflict with year end or the audit? Is there a business acquisition that's going on that this project, you may lose some of your resources? If you've identified a lot of projects, how will you stage those? Do you do the big bang effect where you do all of them at once, or are you going to stagger the start dates to accommodate your resources? Many back office projects require IT resources, so you'll need to work with them to plan your project's kickoff so you have adequate support from IT. Next, the second is to communicate those benefits of the project and the milestones. You'll want to communicate these to the stakeholders so they can help prioritize the sequence of the implementation and which implementations get put in place. And lastly, you'll want to allow for flexibility. If this is a long-term project that it's going to cover months or possibly even years, business changes during that time, and you'll want to be able to incorporate those changes into this project so you can take that new information and keep moving forward and have your project give the greatest benefit. And the fourth step is to develop and execute a plan. Now it's time to develop that plan. A detailed project plan is vital to all projects. This will help everyone know what's going on and when activities are due. It'll identify who's responsible for a task, what tasks are dependent on other tasks, and if due dates are missed, what other tasks will be affected, and will this affect the overall timeline of the project and even the budget? To make this happen, you'll want to have a project manager. A project manager on these are very important. Project manager will communicate with the team and the stakeholders. The first step in getting this executed is to hold a project kickoff. This gets everyone on the team together to communicate what is needed and what is expected of each member. It makes sure everyone knows what the project is going to achieve or improve, and it also answers any questions or concerns from other team members. Next, project manager will hold status meetings with team members. This keeps everyone up to date with the status and also to communicate any issues so they can be resolved. Status meetings are held as needed. Typically we see status meetings weekly, but sometimes it could be monthly, but in many times if the project is in a critical area, you could see status meetings daily. That way it opens up the communication to everybody, and everybody can work towards the goal to get something approved or accomplished. The project manager also communicates with the steering committee or the executive team. It's important to keep the steering committee apprised of the status of the project, especially on large projects or very expensive projects. The executive team or the stakeholders, they have other people they have to report to as well, and so they'll need to be kept up abreast of all the information and all the accomplishments that are going on. Overall, the project manager monitors the project process and makes the necessary adjustments to keep the project on schedule and on budget. On larger teams, or larger projects, you also have a change management person. On smaller projects, the PM can also be the change management person, but many times on the larger ones, it's just too much and you need another person that's actually driving the change. This position is a long-term position that ensures the changes stay in place and people don't go back to doing tasks like they used to. You got to remember it's human nature to do something that they're comfortable with, and change is very different to most people. Sometimes it's scary. So a change management person really keeps everybody on track. They keep those changes in place and helps the overall project reach its goals. As you're finishing up a project, don't forget to go back to the business case. Did the project achieve the stated goal? So again, you want to kind of do a follow-up. Did you do what you set out to do? Did you achieve the return on investment? Or did you achieve the stated goal of just improving a process and automating it? We've arrived at our fourth poll question. So I'm going to go and turn your attention back over to our moderator. Steve?
Okay, thanks, Joel. As with all the previous questions, you can begin responding immediately while I read the question and the response option. So our fourth poll question for today is, what element of change management do you foresee being the most challenging for your organization? Choose from among A, is it training, or accountability, or C, communication, or D, stakeholder buy-in, or is it more than one of the above? And again, after selecting your answer, please remember to click the submit button so that we can be sure to record your answer. So let's take a look at the results and maybe provide some commentary in terms of how you see other, marketplace companies out there. Where do they fall?
That's interesting. That's what we see a lot. It's more than one area. There's not one that's driving all of the issues. So I kind of expected to see more than one of the above. Good. All right, with that, I want to turn it over to Ian. Ian?
Thanks, Joel. So now that you know the transformation approach, we wanted to provide you with some tangible examples where we've seen this same approach used to help companies optimize their back offices. So our first example is a software company experiencing what we describe as hypergrowth. In fact, over the past 2 years, this company's revenue has grown over 200%. When they approached us needing help, they had just completed a massive acquisition. Internally, they joked it was like a goldfish swallowing a whale, so it was pretty big. Making matters worse, their finance and accounting processes lacked consistency, accuracy, and accountability, which required them to keep adding headcount in order to accommodate the additional volume of transactions that they had from their growth, and additionally, as a result of these inconsistent and unscalable processes. Their staff was what we would describe as very transactional in nature, having bandwidth only to focus on invoice entry, reconciliations, manual journals, etc. So while capable, the staff really didn't have the bandwidth to provide the business any analytical value on the actual performance of the business itself. They were unfortunately having to work nights and at times weekends, just frankly trying to keep up, and as a result experienced frequent turnover. And while they had several good systems, including a robust ERP NetSuite, no one within the organization really knew how to leverage the system itself to automate and streamline the processes. So following the same guidance presented today, we started with building the business case. We conducted several interviews across the various back office functions to understand really what they were doing today across some of their key processes, including order to cash, procure to pay, and record to report. Through each of these interviews, we captured how the process worked today, pain points their staff experience, and then also asked the staff themselves how they thought the process could become more efficient or easier. This last step was an important step because it gave the staff the opportunity to share their opinions and got them involved in the overall transformation project, preparing them for the pending change, ultimately making it easier for them to understand and implement. So from there, we worked with the team to design what the processes would look like, that future state design phase that Joel talked about. This included looking at the systems that would be involved as well as the roles for the various functional teams. From here, we worked with executive leadership to develop the goals, prioritize the initiatives, and ultimately come up with the project plan. To help prioritize this, we grouped the initiatives based on time to implement and impact to the business, and you'll see this reflected on the impact effort matrix on the slide with the various initiatives plotted. The client needed help fast, so we really started with the initiatives that fell in the quick to implement but high impact category, which for this client, this led us to start with AP, and we really focused on AP invoice entry and how they processed invoice payments. Within 3 weeks, we were able to make some quick configuration changes within NetSuite, change the process AP itself followed, and reduce the number of steps involved, and then trained AP on some canned, out-of-the-box NetSuite functionality, which ultimately gave them a much more efficient, scalable process. So not only did this give bandwidth to AP, but it also removed the need for AP to hire an additional clerk, which gave us tangible ROI within the first few weeks of the project. From there, we focused on the other initiatives, knocking them out in the same fashion, focusing on the ones that took the shortest amount of time but provided that highest impact. We didn't end up going through and implementing everything, but the client and us implemented enough to dramatically impact their business and ultimately accomplish the goals we set out. So what were the results? Ultimately, the project has resulted in shortening their close from 18 days to 5. The process we've developed have and will continue to support their future growth. And now the team itself is able to focus on analysis and more strategic activities instead of just processing everything coming their way. Their turnover has also decreased because, in our opinion, on the whole, employee morale is better. So we'd like to give you another, more systems-focused example, this one from an oilfield services company struggling to close their books. They had just completed 2 acquisitions, each with disparate systems and overall pretty manual processes. In total, they had 21 different systems that were used to process, report, and interface transactions. All these various systems and subsequent manual processes made tracking margin, something that was extremely important for their business, very timely and cumbersome. They had manual reconciliations that required a lot of journal entries to make their adjustments. And these manual journal entries for the reconciliations were in addition to tons of other manual accrual and prepaid entries that they performed every month, many the same amount like rent, etc., that they were having to do manually. Finally, they lacked a tool that could help them consolidate financials. So, like I'm sure many of you have to do, they dumped everything into Excel to provide the consolidated set of books. But, as you can imagine, this file required manual updates each month and additional reconciliations to tie everything back. So overall, their close took 22 days, and by the time they finished one close, they barely had time to review or much less analyze the results before they started another. So we approached this by utilizing the techniques presented today and started with forming that business case. We interviewed 16 teams and focused on the manual processes, which we found were primarily due to limitations of legacy systems, complex requirements for rolling up financials at month end, and frankly, employees that were fixed in old ways. We also benchmarked their close activities against industry standards, so we had some metrics to focus on for improvement opportunities. We then worked with executive leadership, and collectively we really determined that this project would entail both a systems focus and business process changes, and from there structured our project goals around reducing complexity and the time to close. We developed future state processes leveraging both existing and upgraded technology, and developed our project plan with several initiatives needed to accomplish these goals. We ended up leveraging the same impact effort matrix to decide which initiatives to tackle first. And once these initiatives were prioritized, we began working with leadership and the various teams across accounting and finance and IT to realize critical, quick project wins and kick off the small yet important ones. More involved projects and initiatives followed suit. So overall, the effort took about 6 months, but ultimately allowed us to reduce their time from 22 days to 7. And we consolidated their source systems from 21 to 9, as you will see in the diagram. We also implemented tools to automate their reconciliation efforts, and we were able to leverage an existing but not configured consolidation tool that helps create the complex monthly reporting that they required. Additionally, we configured existing system processes to automate their monthly accruals, which reduced their manual journal entries by about 85%. It was definitely a team effort, but everybody was very happy with the results and pitched in at the end. The team can now focus on other value-added activities throughout the month beyond just closing, which I think is something that we all want to be able to do. So as you can see, the techniques presented today can truly help optimize your back office, and we really hope this information was helpful. Steve, I'll turn it back over to you for next steps.
Okay, thanks very much, Ian. So I'd like to begin addressing some of the questions from our audience members. And again, I'll first remind all of our participants to send us your questions and comments by typing them into the Q&A panel on the left side of your screen. This one might be for Junaid, but I'll read it to you and you can let me know. How prevalent is the culture of companies actually evaluating results of projects in the light of the original business case? And do you find some of your clients constantly implementing process improvement projects, but not frequently assessing if the original business case rationale was achieved? There's a lot there, but Junaid, would you want to comment?
Sure, yeah, no, absolutely. So I think from our perspective, it is very important to ensure that, as you're developing the business case, that you are developing milestones and checkpoints as you're going through the transformation to ensure that there is more of a reevaluation effort as part of the transformation, that you are achieving the benefits that are out there that are kind of hypothesized as part of the engagement.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. How do you stress the importance of the back office to leadership? Maybe Junaid, take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So for that one in particular, I think the way I would tell each of you is you have to put yourself in their shoes, right? So from a management perspective, they're always very concerned about driving growth and improving profitability inside of their organization. So as you think about it from an executive perspective, you have to align your goals and the way that you're thinking about improving your back office to their goals. So that's usually tied through a ROI type of engagement, so making sure you are explicitly thinking about benefits and the cost elements that are going to be part of that to drive those benefits. Another item that I would think about is, over time with new technology and there's been a large importance to data. And executives typically are always looking to the back office to provide them the data to be able to make better strategic decisions. So as you're developing that business case or as you're going to your executives, I would stress the importance of obviously ROI, and number two is to show them that you're going to have better data that you're going to be able to deploy to them to allow them to make better decisions in regards to how to drive the organization.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned also about the underutilization of technology. So this question is, what is the best way to identify how we are underutilizing our current technology platform? Ian, you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Steve. I think first you obviously have to understand the capabilities of the technology that you currently have today. And I think you can look to subject matter experts on those technologies that understand the technology, but also the business processes, because they really need to go hand in hand. That that technology is really just a tool to enable your business process. So you've got to have a partner who can help with both of those. And once you've got somebody who really knows the technology and business processes inside and out, you really need to take kind of an assessment approach to your current processes and review those and kind of assess where you think you fall on your business processes and how you're leveraging that technology. Another easy way for an ERP or GL system is to look at how many manual journal entries you're performing every month. If you're performing a high number of manual journals, then clearly something's not automatically calculating or not integrating into your ERP system effectively. So that's an easy way to kind of analyze whether you may be underutilizing technology.
Okay, thank you. You touched on it, I think, a little bit in one of the business cases, but which of the stages in the transformation approach requires the highest level of executive involvement? Joel, perhaps that one?
Yeah, so I think every phase it's important for the executives to stay involved, but up front on the business case, when you're developing that plan, that case for change, I think this is where the executive involvement is going to be paramount, to have them involved in it, let them also help make the decision for it. That way, as you're going through the whole process, you have that buy-in from that executive level. I think also on the very end of the project, as the project's coming to a close and you've implemented all the changes, again, the change management person can only drive so much. The executives have to be managing the business from the new way. So they have to be saying, I'm not going to approve journal entries anymore manually. I'm going to approve them in a system, or I'm going to only look at reconciliations in the automated way. I'm not looking at paper reconciliations anymore. So they are kind of on the front end, but they're also the sustaining power on the back end of that change. They're the one that's going to actually enforce it, and they have to enforce the new process that's been put in place.
Okay, thanks. And we have time for one more question. So just so our audience has a better understanding, as a business changes on a long-term project, how does a company like yours, Riveron, ensure alignment with the client?
I think this is Ian, and I'll kind of take the initial stab at this. I think that we ensure alignment through our steering committees and proper executive participation in those meetings to make sure that we're aligned with not only the individuals who are running the projects, but also the executives and what may change throughout the life of the project based on their priorities and company priorities.
Yeah, and this is Junaid. I would just add that we have, as a business is changing and you have a long-term engagement, you should factor in milestones and checkpoints during that engagement, where you go in and reevaluate what has been achieved and what is kind of on the pipeline to be achieved, and make sure you're having those conversations, because if the business does drastically change, it might have a major impact into how you're going through and designing the implementation plan. So you might need some changes to kind of be reflective on there as well.
Definitely the flexibility in the project. The project needs to take in any new information and adjust as needed for that change that's especially on those long-term projects.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Junaid and Ian and Joel and Tim, and I'll turn it back over to Adam.
Thanks so much, Steve. I'd like to thank our facilitator and panelists for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. We're very appreciative that they've made time for IMA with our audience today. And also thank you, Steve Shannon, for moderating today's event. I want to again thank Oracle NetSuite for presenting today's webinar, and thank you all of you for participation in today's event and your commitment to IMA and your professional development through IMA's Inside Talk webinar series. I look forward to spending time with you again soon when we'll enjoy some more Inside Talk.